Glendale Civil Service Commission. Sandra, could we please have the roll call?
Commissioner Devine.
Here.
Commissioner Manukian.
Here.
Chair Gantis.
Here.
And for the record, Commissioner Carrion and Coleman are absent.
Thank you. What is next, please?
Minutes.
The minutes of the meeting of March 25, 2009.
Move to approve and dispense from reading.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Devine.
Yes.
Commissioner Manukian.
Yes.
Chair Gantis.
Yes. What is next, please?
Oral communications.
Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. The commission may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. I have no cards. Is there anybody here that wishes to address the Civil Service Commission on oral communications? None appearing. I declare oral communications closed. What is next?
Recruitment and examination status report.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, the item before you is recruitment and examination report. As you can see, a small to moderate recruitment load at this time. There is still a rather firm hiring freeze in effect, although there are some exceptions to that. Mostly you'll see openings in the area of water and power, a few in the community development and housing. Most of these are non-general fund related positions. We also have a few limited activity going on in the police department, but otherwise report exemplifies the work we've been doing, at least in the recruitment area. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer those for you.
Any questions? No action is required. What is next, please?
Job bulletin for approval, energy marketer trader.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item is a request for a open recruitment bulletin for the position of energy marketer trader. The reason this is coming before you is that in this previous recruitment process, this position had been recruited for on a promotional basis. In fact, probably the last several times that this has been recruited for, we've hired from within. On this occasion, there are some new requirements and a need to go to the outside, and I have staff here to address those reasons. Just want to make clear that this has been addressed with both our Management Association and our Employees Association. This is a mid-management position, however, the individuals normally who would be interested in promoting to this would be coming from our GCEA department, and they have expressed no concerns about this being handled on an open basis. So with that, the bulletin is here for your consideration. We also have a organization chart perusal. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. We have Mr. Steiger here, General Manager for Glendale Water and Power, and Ms. Klein from GWP to answer any questions.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Devine.
I have several questions, if I may. First of all, Mr. Doyle, is this a new position or an existing position?
My understanding is that this is a vacant position that we're seeking to fill.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And was this same bulletin used when you did the promotional exam?
We've had to change it since that point in time because there's a number of other responsibilities and changes in the marketplace that we've had to incorporate. So there are changes.
In essence, this same type of bulletin existed when you were doing it on a promotional basis as opposed to the open basis?
This is the same basic one that we've used, yes.
Okay. And I'm kind of curious, when I read the description that you wrote, Mr. Doyle, it first of all transmitted some sort of sense of urgency that we need to get this position online pretty quickly. And it also indicated, I'm going to read a couple of sections, it says GWP needs a fully qualified, experienced trader to fill this position. And there is currently no one cross-trained to the level required to step into this role without extensive, lengthy training. So when I read that, and I look at the bulletin under experience, it says 6 years increasingly responsible subprofessional engineering experience or power system operation dispatch experience in the electrical utility field. And my first question is, what does that experience have to do with the energy market training or trading? And then the second part, which really has me curious. It says, experience trading in the California independent system operator market, highly desirable. And when I read again the description, it sounded like it was essential to have someone that does that and have them right now. And then when you say highly desirable, it doesn't really fit with the description that you wrote previously. So I'd like to understand the thinking behind that.
Okay. In fact, the experience with the California ISO is critical, quite frankly, because what's occurring right now is the ISO is going into a new market structure, starting this month, as a matter of fact, which creates a new day-ahead and real-time trading requirement. We've not participated in that prior, nor has anyone else for that matter, because it hasn't existed. So what we need is someone that understands that type of trading. So you are right. It's really more than just
Highly desirable.
Highly desirable. You're correct. Yes.
I think we need, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chairman, but I am the chairman. I think we need to have somebody, are there not people with that kind of experience out there that are like lower level to bigger operations that have some experience in that area, like assistants or something like that we could put a number? I mean, I think Mr. Devine's correct. We need somebody with some experience, or at least exposure to that.
Well, it is correct that we need someone that has that experience. That's correct.
Mr. Chair, if I could add, this is obviously a changing operation. This position has traditionally been filled internally, and generally we have gotten those candidates from our Howard Substation Dispatch Center, and we have had people with background in either engineering or sub-professional engineering, and this type of experience wasn't necessarily required coming in the door. And I think the point is that it is getting more and more specialized. And at this point, in fact, there's been some operational changes in the Howard Substation to where they're no longer doing, is it the real-time trading?
Yeah, real-time trading is no longer done under dispatch. That's correct.
It used to be. And so they used to have, the employees in-house used to have the ability to acquire some of this experience, which they're not any longer. But I think we should, at some point, and perhaps we should have done that prior to doing this recruitment, do a wholesale change on the specification to ramp up the minimum requirements to some degree. Because Mr. Steiger is correct. The things that we're looking for are certainly more than just desirable. These are things that we really, really want to have.
Correct.
So we're thinking now, in the way the market is at this time, that we probably will be able to find people like this on the outside, whereas in the past, maybe not. But
right now, if this goes out and this commission approves it, to me, it's kind of misleading to any prospective candidates. They say, well, I've done it a little bit, but I'm really not that conversant in it. But the bulletin only said highly desirable, so it doesn't mean I have to have it. So I think to make it more positive and ask for what we want, perhaps that needs to be changed before this bulletin goes out. I'll leave that up to my fellow commissioners.
I agree. I mean, if it's a...
Do we have, Mr. Steiger, some sense of what kind of experience? I'm envisioning my daughter's boyfriend is a trader on the mercantile floor where he trades oil options.
Right.
Am I correct? I mean, I know it's probably not the same, but it's similar. We're
sitting
sitting here, bottom line, trading, and if we have an excess of power, we're trading that. And I think you said in here we're hoping to generate $10 million, increasing to $10 million by 2014.
That's correct.
And that's $10 million. Where are we at now, approximately?
Right now, we generate about anywhere from $1 to $3 million a year in additional revenue.
So we're talking another $7 million at a time when we just jettisoned $8 million off of a budget.
That's correct.
That's a very serious consideration. And I think, Mr. Devine, do we have any sense of what kind of experience a couple years experience in this kind of stuff. I don't know. And then it seems to me that we can make that change now and approve the bulletin and get moving, because I think it's important to put them in there. But I don't think we can short shrift what Mr. Devine said. I don't know how Mr. Devine feels about it, and I don't know that 2 years is what you want. 4 years, I have no sense of the market, but that would seem to me to make some sense. Mr. Manukian?
I think instead of just putting a time frame, why don't you start by saying the experience is required? I think having to put a certain number, then I think that's somewhere where you guys can come in and decide how much of experience is enough.
Right.
But I think Mr. Devine has hit it head on, that we should, instead of making it desirable, make it a requirement.
Yeah, members of the commission, it's always easier to set the minimums broader, lower, and see what we get, versus saying must be 5 years or must be 4 years, and we might not end up with anyone. I mean, you can never predict who's going to apply for these jobs, as opposed to leaving it as it is, where we could end up with a lot of applicants, and we'd have to be in the position of testing them, screening many people out. So I think we're all comfortable with either leaving it where it is, or perhaps what Commissioner Manukian is suggesting, some baseline statement that some experience with the California Independent System Operator
Is required.
Is required.
I agree.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Are you okay with
Yeah.
that, Mr. Devine?
You want to make that
Well,
motion?
I would want to mention one other thing. That you said that the job spec may not reflect that. So the job spec goes hand in hand with the bulletin, if I'm correct.
That's correct. But
So
the
does the
commission
job
has
spec need to be revised or amended to reflect the requirement rather than the desirability?
we should certainly go there and look at that specification. And I frankly don't know how long it's been since the spec has been looked at. But the last time this position was filled internally had to have been 7 or 8 years ago. And we have two of these two individuals in these positions. So it's not a position we fill frequently. So we can bring that back as well.
Mr. Devine,
Make a motion, if that's okay.
make a motion
Okay.
for what?
Pardon me?
Go ahead and make a motion. What do you want?
I move that we approve the job bulletin with the amendment to the last sentence under experience, where it says experience trading in the CISO market is required, and that the job specifications be changed to reflect the requirement for that trade.
I second that.
Okay, I think that's number one. It's a compound motion, but I think number two is what we would want to do is pass the motion, because we can do the job spec any way we want. But if it's different than the job spec, the bulletin, if it's different than the job specs, it has to come to us. So we can change the bulletin. I think then we instruct Mr. Doyle to have the staff
Fine.
change the job spec. So if, with all due respect, Mr.
I will amend
Devine,
the
unless
motion to reflect that.
our lawyer disagrees, that the motion be amended that we change the job bulletin to reflect what you said, and then afterwards you can ask that we direct Mr. Doyle to direct the staff to change the job specs. Is that okay with the seconder?
Absolutely.
Roll call, please. Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Doyle?
Just for clarification, are you directing that spec be changed, or are you directing that to be brought back?
Be brought back, however, you have to relook at it and you bring it
So there may
back.
be other things that we would want to
Yeah.
address on this.
Yeah, no. The direction would be to review the job spec and bring it back to us, and if there are other changes, obviously those will be there. But clearly you have the sense that one of the things we're saying is that we're going to put into the job spec, if in fact after all of this or through the process you think that you want to put a number of years, that no, we really got to have 2 years in there, you're going through all of this, then the job spec will reflect that later on. Right now, we want to get you somebody in here so we can earn $7 million by 2014 extra and get somebody that has some experience, and then you guys can figure out what that experience is.
Okay.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Need a second?
We already
Yeah,
said.
seconder agreed. Mr. Manukian.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Chair Gantis?
Yes. And you have that direction, Mr. Doyle. Do we need to redirect you on that?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I would like to
I'm sorry,
just mention, I'd like to compliment Mr. Steiger on his foresight and watching out for the city and doing this upgrade. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we don't need any portion of that $7 million. We still work for free here. That's a joke, ladies and gentlemen, in case anybody figures it isn't. What is next?
Resolution, request to declare certain positions unclassified.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item is a request to declare certain positions that we hope to fill soon within our Community Development and Housing Department as unclassified positions. The purpose of this request is that the city is in a position to receive over $4 million in federal stimulus grant funds relating to the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009. This act provides funding for positions in several different areas of which the city would be in the position of allocating those funds and expending them for programs. These are programs primarily involved in Workforce Investment Act or workforce activities, also the Community Development Block Grant Program, as well as programs that could be extended for homeless services. This money is becoming available shortly, and the city is going to be under the gun to expend it appropriately and staff up with the appropriate positions to take action on these programs. What the Community Development and Housing Department has done is identified as many as 21 positions that they will need to hire in order to administer these programs. And these are grant-funded positions. We don't know the duration, how long they're going to last, but initially we're looking at 2 years. That could be extended, could not, but what we're looking at is for the Commission to grant its approval to fill these positions as unclassified, non-civil service positions, to where if the funding for these positions were to be taken away, that the city and the Community Development Department would be in the position to then let these people, separate these people from employment without any due process rights for their removal, without the layoff and bumping rights and such. In the staff report, I note that we make this request with great trepidation.
Salary classified. So, with that, in addition to my report, there's a more extensive report prepared by Ms. Blake of Community Development and Housing, which provides a greater description of what these positions will be used for. And then the last page is the actual resolution
resolution that the Commission would adopt declaring these specific classifications as unclassified. So with that, be happy to answer any questions. We do have Jess Duran, who's the Assistant Director for Community Development and Housing, and Juan Nelson, who is the Senior Community Development Supervisor for the Workforce Investment Area.
Any questions? I have 1, 2, 3, maybe more. My first question, Mr. Doyle, you know my love of creating additional positions in the bureaucracy. Why are these positions, is the money dependent on us creating additional positions?
Let me have Jess address that.
I guess the flip side of that is, why can't we do it with the staff we have now?
Chairman Gantis, members of the Civil Service Commission, our current staffing levels could not possibly absorb the requirements for the expenditure of an additional $4.2 million as part of the President's economic stimulus program. The programs that we are to develop and design and the services that we are to provide to our residents are direct services. We need case managers to act as job coaches at our job center. It's one-on-one interactions. It's a lot of intake, assessment, and eligibility work. There's a lot of administrative and financial documentation involved. As you know, the President has charged us with greater accountability and scrutiny and transparency for the economic stimulus funding. So,
Same transparency you asked of AIG?
probably a little bit more. So we could not come close to meeting the demands for the use of these funds with existing staff.
Of the 4.2, is 4.2 million, is that, am I correct with
Yes,
what we're looking to get?
It's $2 million under workforce and $2.2 under homeless prevention and community development block grant.
Okay, so under the first one, the workforce activities, the 2 million, those are the 5, am I correct, 5, 7, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 positions that you're asking for?
Correct.
On page 1?
Correct.
How much of that $2.2 million is going to be expended on salaries? And I assume then we add, 40% for benefits, because we're going to be giving them all the benefits. Am I correct?
It's approximately $500,000.
So of the 2 million, that's just salaries. Have we included benefits in there, or do we add benefits to that?
That would include the benefit load.
Is that per year?
This is over the 2-year period or per year?
That's per year, right?
So the 2 million is per year or total?
The $2 million is a one-time allocation. The staffing costs, if we were to fill all of these positions, would be about $500,000 a year.
A year. So basically 50% of the $2 million would go to staffing.
Correct. But the case of staffing in terms of staff that is providing direct services versus staff that is administrative staff. So it's operational costs, but it is staffing.
But then there's still administrative services. We haven't funded the unknown cost, which is the costs of you and Ms. Nelson and whomever else is going to oversee all of that, which is unknown, basically.
Those costs, for the most part, will be leveraged. For example, the rent for the job center will be leveraged. There will be no charges to economic stimulus funds for rent, utilities, office supplies. Those maintenance and operational costs will be leveraging these funds. So this is purely for staff, as it relates to the workforce.
So all of that's going to be eaten up in the budgeted amounts that go to your department. Am I correct? And the actual
Correct.
Workforce place we're going to work at is an existing place. We're not
Correct.
getting a new one.
Correct.
Is there staff at the existing place?
Yes, there is.
If we didn't approve this, are we still going to get the money?
Yes, we will still get the money, and it will be a much different challenge to expend the funds. There are very strict guidelines and timetables for the expenditure of funds. If we were late in adding staff to provide the service levels that we are expected to provide, eventually, quickly, those funds will be recaptured by the Department of Labor in the case of workforce, and by the Department of HUD in the case of the homeless prevention funds.
talk about the homeless prevention. Of the 2.2 million, I only see 3 positions that are going to be hired. Am I correct? 4, excuse me.
Yes, it's 4 positions for homeless prevention programs and for an expanded community development block grant program.
Oh, I understand there's 2 areas. The homeless portion is only having 4 additional ones, and the other one had, how many did I say, 17, 19, 14?
Oh.
17, 18, 19, excuse me, right? 7, 8, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, sorry.
Oh,
17.
okay, let me start over again. Of the 4.2, 2 million is from the Federal Department of Labor for workforce, and that's the 17 positions.
That's correct.
2.2 million is for homeless prevention / community development block grant.
And that's 4 positions.
Yes, and that's 4 positions. So the homeless prevention staffing will be working on both homeless prevention and community development block grant administration.
Mr. Manukian.
I have a couple questions. I just want to make sure I get this straight. These fundings that are provided by the president, are they specifically for staffing, or have they just allocated these funds for you guys to come up with a program? I just want to make sure, because to me something doesn't sound right. If 2.2 million, let's say, is given for the CDBG and the homeless program, how much of that is going to be eaten up with salaries? The other one was $500,000 a year. On this one, how much are we looking? I'm just trying to get an understanding. How much of it is this where this funds was allocated for?
It's approximately $400,000
A year.
a year.
Okay, so let's say 800,000. So from the 2.2, 800,000 is gone straight just for salaries. So whatever's left over, you could use for the actual program itself.
Correct.
Okay.
In the case of homeless prevention, we will be providing rental subsidies to families that have lost their jobs and are having a difficult time paying their rents, as well as utility assistance. Families that are having a difficult time paying their utility. So there's a lot of intake and eligibility and counseling and follow-up to follow those families to ensure that the funds are being spent in compliance with all of the program requirements. So, for example, if once they start receiving rental assistance and then they're connected to the caseworkers in the workforce unit, and if they're lucky enough to get a job, then the follow-up will also be able to determine when they can get off the program, so we can continue to free up funds for the next family to come in to start receiving that kind of assistance.
Yeah, that part I understand, but the part that I'm having trouble digesting is by the time we're done paying the salaries, there's barely anything left. For your CDBG program and the homeless program, for your current staff would not be able to handle that portion of it?
No.
Mr. Chair.
Or maybe I'm understanding this wrong. I don't know.
No, I think you're understanding it very correctly, Mr. Manukian. Yes, Mr.
Chair, I don't know near as much about these programs as Mr. Duran does, but these are very service-oriented programs. This staff that will be providing these, they're going to be working with hundreds of people a day on things like job training and helping, counseling, career counseling, and getting people employable. They're not being hired to build roads and bridges. They're being hired to train people, to get people
But is there anything left
contacts.
for them to work on?
Not much.
Well,
That's the part I'm trying to understand, because
I'm not sure that's the point of those funds. Those funds are people-oriented to provide services to people. Am I correct on that? Or?
Yes, Commissioner Manukian, if I could expand a little bit. Under the homeless prevention program, we are projecting to serve 90 families with rental assistance at an average, I believe, of $500 a month. 90 families at $500 a month for an average of 6 to 9 months each family that will be coming through the program. So our budget is based on that, and then taking into account the cost for the caseworkers to be working on case management with those families. Under the workforce program, it's predicated on serving 200 individuals with job assistance, job counseling, job placement, and job
And
training.
I'm sorry, that 200 was based on your calculation of what is left? Is that how you guys come up with that 200? Or is there an allocation up front of this is...
It's based on the type of program design we feel we can put together to meet the purpose and the intent of the economic stimulus funding, and based on our practical experience of running employment and training programs and running homeless prevention counseling programs. So it's based on our experience of what's required to run these programs.
Which are programs you're running right now, though, right?
Yeah, which are programs we're running right now at staff capacity.
Now, does this package from the government come with certain requirements as far as how much of it can be allocated for your employment, how much of it can be allocated? Do they put any requirements at all, or?
There are restrictions for how much we can spend on administration versus operations.
And
For example, in the case of community development, the Community Development Block Grant Program, typically it's 20%. We haven't received the implementing guidelines yet, but we believe it's going to be about 5 or 10% that they're going to allow for administration. So it will be less than the normal program, because they agree they want most of the money to get out to the community, to the people that need the help.
but the way I'm seeing it so far, either I'm miscalculating or, and I'm sorry, I'm a little bit dumb. John gets this much easier than I do, but so far I'm seeing 50% of it is going.
Salaries.
Am I doing this incorrectly?
Yeah, they're going to salaries, but under HUD's definition, all the caseworkers are considered operational costs, not administrative costs, for
okay.
example. In the case of Community Development Block Grant, the only administrative positions would be accounting and the administrative analyst. There's an administrative analyst that is Homeless Management Information System. That's our automated information system. That, for example, would be an operational cost. Another alternative would be, and it's possible that what other communities are doing is they are contracting these services to other organizations. So the city's not operating the programs themselves, and so that would be a little bit different. They're still using a significant amount of funding for staff, except it's not the city staff, it's a nonprofit organization staff. So it would appear different. In our case, we are very qualified at our job center because, as Chairman Gantis indicated, these are programs and services that we already run, that we are equipped and geared to run, but not at this magnitude. And it would be the same thing with the homeless assistance.
Thank you.
Mr. Devine?
As I recall, there were many applicants in the community block grant process that provided these types of services that didn't get funded because we didn't have the money. So what would be the difference between us hiring staff and paying them to do these services rather than giving that money to some of these organizations that are already geared up, that already provide these services through the block grant process?
Commissioner Devine, those agencies would probably have the same issue that the city has. They would not have the capacity without adding staff themselves. In terms of rent subsidies to prevent homelessness, we operate that program under our Section 8 rental assistance program, because we're talking about needing to inspect units to certify that they are habitable units and they meet housing quality standards. We're talking about negotiating or renegotiating rents with landlords on behalf of tenants. Then we're talking about a payment system by which we subsidize rents on a monthly basis on behalf of participants. And there aren't any organizations in our community that currently does that type of work as it relates to the homeless prevention. And with regard to the job training and employment counseling, there isn't an existing organization in our community that provides that service at this level, the level that we need.
GYA doesn't do that?
GYA actually will be using a major portion of these funds because a major component of the workforce funding is youth employment. We plan to put anywhere between 350 and 400 youth to work as part of economic stimulus funding.
What
So
about-
it's a major part.
What about Path Achieve and dealing with the homeless? They have an operation already set up.
Yeah.
So could this money be funneled to them and let them take care of the homeless aspect?
Yes, our plan calls for a contract with PATH. Our budget includes a contract with PATH to provide some homeless counseling. But PATH would not have the capacity to operate a rental assistance program.
So will we be creating a rental assistance program that parallels PATH's program?
No.
And staff it with these people?
No. We will be creating a rent subsidy program that parallels the city's existing Section 8 rental assistance program.
Okay, and then Mr. Gaddis asked a good question, and I don't remember what your answer was, but if this is not approved, you said we still get the funds, what would we do then? What would community redevelopment do then?
We'd probably keep on trying to get them approved. We could not expend these funds without the administrative capacity to do it. We should not take the risk of taking these funds and try to spend them if we're not going to be able to comply with the administratively laden contract compliance program requirements. Because if we don't do it right, then the city will have to pay back funds.
And following up on Mr. Manukian's question, looking at the salaries versus the operational costs that you described, and Mr. Manukian pointed out that, probably half of the money is going towards salaries. Is it my understanding that none of this money is actually going to the community in terms of giving a family X amount of dollars to buy groceries or X amount of dollars to buy a suit to go out to get a job, that all the money is for staff to help the community learn how to get jobs or send them in direction?
It's totally true.
In the case of workforce development, this funding includes funds available to pay for training, to pay for schools, trade schools, for example, nurses training, or individual training accounts on behalf of families. So we might execute individual training contracts with different vendors on behalf of the family. So they go to school, and we are reimbursing the school. If they need supportive services such as childcare or bus tokens, or to pay for uniforms, in order to participate in these programs, the workforce funds will pay for those supportive services.
Right. But those funds, again, will be depleted by the amount of the funds that are going towards the salaries that Mr. Manukian pointed out.
The budget is to serve 200 families with that service. And again, we're talking about caseworkers. These are counselors working one-on-one with families. It's not for administrative staff.
Yeah, it is. You've got an administrative analyst. You've got an administrative associate.
I'm sorry. A portion of it is, but not all of it.
Why don't we have a senior administrative associate? You just hit my wrong button, Mr. Manukian.
Honestly, it is not our intention to try to stop this money from coming into the city. It's actually the other way around. We want to, at least I'll speak for myself, I'm not comfortable approving this the way it is. Either I don't understand this correctly, or if a program is being created and half of that, the funds are going away just for costs of the employment, I think I would like to, at least for myself, take a look at this. Explore all the options. And again, I'm not trying in any way to create an obstacle for us to not get this money. We want to, but we want to make sure at least it's put to good use. Not that your proposal isn't, but I think there might be other ways of looking at it, especially as Commissioner Devine pointed out, the saddest part was to see a lot of those organizations, during the CDBG requests for funds, they were turned away, and a lot of those organizations were really good organizations that we said we had no money for. Here we have, $4 million just in one of the programs, and if we can somehow incorporate them into this process, maybe by you revisiting this, and again, I'm speaking for myself. I don't know how my colleagues feel. If you guys can revisit this and see how you can incorporate some of those organizations a little bit more into this program by maybe eliminating some of the staff that you were requesting and get them involved into this a little bit. I don't know. Maybe I'd like to know what my colleagues.
Well, I am never comfortable. I think what we have, Matt, am I correct? Bottom line, we're creating 21 new positions in the city.
No.
Yes, we are.
Chair.
Why aren't we?
Well, we, meaning the city, is in order to administer these programs.
That's correct.
Yes. The commission today is being asked to declare these positions that the city intends to create unclassified. And I want to be clear what the commission's authority is versus the bigger picture of what Mr. Duran's obligations are as far as the receipt of these funds and the administration of these programs. So I'm not sure where that leaves us if you don't approve this, but I think the question here is focusing strictly on the question of unclassified versus non-classified.
Let me ask you this.
Or if there's another method of us.
Are these positions currently available? Are they open? Are they in the budget right now? Are they budgeted positions?
To ask if these.
No. So if we were to approve this, do you have to get them budgeted positions, or we have now created unclassified positions that you can fill as unclassified?
I believe we would have to get the city manager and city council's authorization to add these positions to the budget.
Yes.
That would be subsequent.
Basically, they would be budgeted positions that would be funded by grants, and our thing here is to create them as unclassified, and because you're not going to go and create them unless they're unclassified, and they can't be unclassified unless we make them unclassified.
That's correct. Or, again, they can choose to fill them as hourlies, or they can choose to just fill them on a salaried classified basis, one way or the other.
If they were to choose to fill them as hourly, they don't need our approval for that.
No, but these positions would have to fall under the rules that the commission has imposed relative to 1,250 hours in a year. So that would create, again, more difficulty and it would place a restriction on the number of hours these people could work. And they'd be non-benefited too.
Do we not? I'm looking at the resolution, and it talks about caseworker 1. Do we have positions that are classified that are caseworker? How do we differentiate between the unclassified?
These are all existing city job classifications.
I understand
that have some job descriptions and such.
We just don't have budgeted positions for these. These are going, and that's not our job. We do not create positions, because that's always been my understanding. But we would determine whether or not they're classified or unclassified.
Correct.
The city council, arguably, if we said no, the city council could still budget these positions.
That's correct.
And
make them classified.
They could make them classified, or they could make them hourly. They just can't make them unclassified. That's the only thing we have a choice of.
That is correct.
What's the downside if they are classified?
Oh, then they're civil service.
If they are classified, then they would have civil service protections, and upon the completion of these funds, they would have due process rights.
I'll support my commissioners whichever way they go on.
Well, after Matt's statement, I was going to say the same thing, that I think this commissioner has kind of gone off track a little bit in trying to micromanage how these funds are expended and how many they need and whether we should do it, when, as Matt pointed out, our main goal here is to determine whether or not we're going to approve them to be unclassified. And based on what I've heard and the options we have, I'd be, at this point, ready to move to support the resolution.
Especially if we're going to hire them anyways, at least they should be.
Well, we don't know they're going to hire them anyway.
Well,
and
it's not our job to make that decision.
And if I could add, I hope I'm not speaking out of line, but the department may not fill all of these 21 positions.
Gee, I hope not.
This is sort of a scenario which the staff within community development put together as to what they anticipate they need in order to provide these programs. But it could be they'll fill 15 of these or 16. But this is, I told Ms. Blake that in bringing this before the commission, let's be safe and make sure that every possible need that we would have, let's get all the potential positions listed. In case we do have to fill every single one of these.
Mr. Doyle, the resolution itself, though, you'd indicated this was a 2-year position. Can we amend the resolution that for a period of 2 years from a date certain, these will be unclassified, so that they definitely have to come back to us? Can we not limit that? That's not in the resolution.
Certainly.
Then for sure they'd have to come back, and we'd have to revisit the issue again.
So you want to put a date certain?
I don't know how it would go. When do we? I guess it would be from today's date. It's going to be on the 8th, so that it would be an unclassified. The following salaries are hereby declared unclassified and exempt from the classified service to and until April 8, 2011. That work for you, Mr. Duran? No, but that's the way it's going to be.
Chairman Gantis, I wanted to recommend a time frame that was consistent with the federal budget calendar, which would be October 1 to September 30th. So maybe October 1st of 2011, we would come back with a report on the status of these positions and our programs and our outcomes and where we go from that point.
I have no problem.
September 30th would make more sense, but okay. I have no problem with that.
You want to make a motion?
Okay, well, I move that the resolution is approved with the suggestions made by Chairman Gantis in terms of the time frame.
As amended by Mr. Duran.
It's amended by
September 30. In other words, that they remain unclassified to and until September 30, 2011.
And I second that. As the date.
So now the next step, Matt, I want to be sure, because I hate voting for these things, but I guess it is economic stimulus for hiring 21 people and giving them jobs. And the beauty is we are giving them benefits, and they're going to be treated as equals, which has always been the purpose. And Mr. Doyle's report was absolutely correct. In case anybody has any misunderstanding, our purpose has always been that we're not going to have two classes of employees in the city of Glendale. They're all going to be treated equally. Gotcha. But in this case, because of the nature of the grants, that we're going to allow them to be unclassified. Roll call.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Chair Gantis?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. Thank you, Ms. Nelson. What is next?
Agenda forecast.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, your agenda forecast has items for the upcoming meetings. Our next meeting on April 22nd, we will have a report from the City Attorney upon the Commission's jurisdiction on investigations. We also have our quarterly advertising budget for the January through March of 2009 advertising expenditures. So, and then nothing thus far for the May 13th meeting, and then on May 27th, we will have the remainder of the amendments to civil service rules.
And I think I mentioned to you in my email, Ms. Torres, that I'm going to be absent June 24th. I'll also be absent July 22nd.
Also, I believe our city attorney mentioned that she will not be here on the 22nd, so perhaps
correct.
we need to move that item
No,
since...
Scott's coming.
Oh, okay.
Scott Howard will be here on
Okay.
that day.
Give you a good substitute?
I doubt it, but not as good as Ms. Farpetian. So
But we'll just have to suffer through, Scott.
we'll handle it.
Anything further on agenda forecast? What is next?
Reports and information passed to employee performance evaluations.
Okay. In honor of Mr. Coleman, who we understand is doing well, Roy, get well. We miss you. We miss you. I hear that you had a little setback, but you're good now. We're very happy to hear that. I will read in honor of Roy, because he always reads these. No past dues from the city attorney's office. Congratulations, Ms. Varpedia. City clerk's office, city manager's office, city treasurer's office, community development and housing, development services, human resources, information services, Did I miss somebody?
You're reading this wrong.
Yeah, it's the X's that have no past due.
Excuse me.
It's that crack. It's catching
I
up.
goofed. So take that back. I'm not congratulating you. City Attorney's Office does, as the others. I read the ones that had them. The ones that don't are Finance, Fire, Glendale Water and Power, Library, Planning, and Police. And we have no third notices, and actually we have no second notices either. So we're okay, but I think we're starting to creep up a little bit.
Mr. Chair, this is not one of our better months
No.
as far as the first notices, and I will say everyone's been very busy with both budgets and elections the last few weeks, so I promise you I will address this again with the executives to make them aware that get these in on time.
Well, we certainly have had some serious budget issues. I know that, coupled with the election. I might be a little lenient for 1 month. That's it.
Oh, this is the first time HR has appeared on the
Yes, I noticed. I didn't read
Late
HR.
notice.
I noticed that. That's the first time.
ever.
Ever. Okay. Well, it's been a trying year this year, 2009. So we'll cut a little slack, but not much. What is next?
Civil Service Commission and staff comments.
Commissioners, staff, anybody have any comments? We've commented on Roy. You spoke to Roy today, yes?
I did. Hopefully, I'll be going to lunch with him next week. So he's doing fine.
He's getting in. That's good to hear. Yes, Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, I want to congratulate all of the candidates and the participants in the election yesterday. I particularly want to recognize all of the city employees who took part in this process and the oversight of the election, the precincts and the polling places. The public may not be aware, but there's an extensive team of city employees that are essentially volunteer their time for this election. Ms. Verpetian is one, and call them Artie's Army, more or less. But my staff was very much involved. You see a lot of them who are not here today, but Amy Martin, Manu Hunanian, Steve Nersessian, Rosie Akopian, Margaret Agus, Ando Verdanian were all out yesterday assisting with the election. And it was essentially from about 6 a.m. to about 10 or 11 p.m. yesterday. A very, very extensive effort to make sure.
Petty said she was here till 1.
Okay.
I stayed till the end.
1 a.m., right?
That's correct.
So it was a lot of work. I mean, a lot of work goes into making this a successful endeavor, and I want to thank all the staff who participated.
Thank you, Ms. Varpetian, and I see Rosie's here, but the rest of them are all sleeping, probably. Any other staff and or commission comments? In closed session, we have none.
To adjourn.
We are adjourned.